Merry Christmas. Welcome to the Nerdifyed podcast. I am the Wilhelm Scream, accompanied by
Cranberry Landers. Merry Christmas.
and of course our compatriot in Christmas crime,
The cape is a lie.
Christmas capers.
Christmas Capers.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you for coming with us on this Yuletide episode and this holiday tradition we hope to keep going. We are discussing
Christmas tradition? Not a holiday tradition.
No, this is specifically a Hanukkah episode.
I'm not going to be wearing this hat for like Thanksgiving.
This is what I wear
or for New
Kwanzaa.
Year's. This
Kwanzaa
is not my New
I'm
Year's.
making a note now because you're wearing that hat on Thanksgiving now.
That's right.
It is not Thanksgiving.
But Merry Christmas. We are discussing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer by Rankin Bass, and we are going to be discussing all the amazing eccentricities of this claymation classic, and hopefully you guys get something out of it and we can really start digging into it. But first and foremost, I'm genuinely curious, what is your guys' favorite Christmas movie?
You know, it's hard for me to decide. I personally really like I like Charlie Brown Christmas because it's got family ties for me.
Classic.
It's strong in my family. It's very strong in my family. It's not forced. That wasn't forced at all, that joke. Anyways, and the other one would be Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, which is also a classic. And maybe like a close second or third would be Year Without a Santa Claus, because I really dig Snow Miser.
Yeah.
And all of his dance sequences.
Favorite Christmas movie? I think I'm up for a tie here. I think Die Hard is definitely a good go-to Christmas movie.
Yeah, classic.
I'm totally joking.
Just brings the
careful,
Yuletide spirit, you know?
It's
careful. Yeah. You'll shoot your eye out, kid. No, but the Christmas Story is one that I thoroughly enjoyed watching growing up. I loved all of the claymation movies. I looked forward to coming home from school during the month of December and like watching all the Christmas movies that used to run on whatever channel they'd run on, because that was what they would do every evening through the month of December. And you had 25 days of Christmas movies, be it the Christmas Story or Rudolph or Jack Frost or any of those. But yeah, I think Christmas Story I could really relate to, just because we had a pretty large family, and I remember wanting a BB gun when I was a kid.
Oh,
and that
nice.
famous line, "You'll shoot your eye out, kid."
I wanted one too.
And then he gets booted down the slide by Santa Claus.
That and
I do think the most memorable scene for me in that movie, though, is when they lick the pole.
Of course. Yeah.
Whoa!
And then they abandon their friend because the bell rings.
I just think of that. Whenever I see the licking of the pole, I think of that and Dumb and Dumber.
Yep.
So it's
Classic.
They're stuck together.
The two best
Like
licking pole scenes in winter by far. I would say I'm kind of cheating, but I have two. Obviously, the Schultz peanut specials for Christmas are amazing and gotta watch those every year. But I also would say two that I watch every single year, can always watch every single year, would be White Christmas and the second Home Alone movie.
Lost in New York.
Yes.
Lost in New York.
Yeah.
I did like the Home Alone movies. But didn't you say you had like a tie? Wasn't there another one that you were into? Cape is a Lie. So there was the Christmas Story?
Rudolph and the Christmas Story. Those are my top two.
Yeah.
I own Rudolph, and I made sure to search that one out and have that one. We also have the Christmas Story. Hannah, my wife, she loves White Christmas.
Nice.
So yeah, we watch all those movies, love them. Home Alone, man, that was a good one. People used to call me Macaulay Culkin when I was a kid because I looked just like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I love those movies. I love the whole like trap sequence and whatnot, and I genuinely think that he was definitely hunting them.
Oh,
He
100%.
wasn't stuck at home. He was out to hurt people.
Or kill masochist. You know what? You know what? I would have figured you for
phone
a
and called
Muppet.
911, but he didn't. He wanted to hurt them. Those
No.
poor men.
This is my house. I have to defend it.
So what he might be doing is he might be saying that like, oh, I'm a poor scared kid, but he's just saying that to himself to give himself an excuse, a reason, so that he can actually fulfill his sadistic desires, his sadistic tendencies.
I mean, when he undoes
Hello,
the map,
my little friend.
when he unwraps the map in the first movie to show like all his elaborate traps and stuff, I don't think he did that in the span of 10 minutes. Pretty sure he's been waiting for this.
Oh, I think it probably took some time. But I don't know. I just figured that was up to his intelligence, owed to his intelligence.
Right.
But I would have figured you for a Muppet Christmas Carol
Oh, yeah.
guy.
I do love myself a good Christmas Carol movie. Mr. Scrooge, one of my favorites.
I think my favorite would be the Muppet one, though, for Christmas Carol films. Like I've enjoyed Scrooged, and there's like the originals, even the ones from the 70s and everything. There's so many amazing versions of it, but the Muppet one, I just can't. I think that's my top for any Christmas Carol movie. But speaking of movies, let's get into the meat of this, which is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, classic claymation Christmas movie.
Yeah, it's really good. Yeah. If you haven't seen it, watch it.
Yeah, it's usually you can find it somewhere on TV at some point. But if you don't have a TV, I still have it on VHS, and I have zero regrets. It is amazing. Still such a good movie, and it's weirdly
even after controversy.
A little controversy here and there, but also it still very much applies, like in its tone and how the characters are presented. It feels almost modern in sensibilities, which is really interesting because it was made in the 60s. And you guys might not actually know, the character of Rudolph was originally invented by a department store.
I knew it was part of advertising.
Like Montgomery Ward or something like that?
Yeah, basically a department store in the 30s needed or wanted to stop paying for coloring books that they were handing out as promotional material. And they went, oh, we should just print our own book. It would keep everything in-house and we'd save money on it. And so they started making their own stories, which was Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer around Christmas. And they printed out a ton and started putting them out. And then a few years later, like 10 years later, I think it was about 15 years later, the song actually then got written and became a mainstay for Christmas.
So it's kind of in line with Santa Claus and how he's currently portrayed with the red and white being used as an advertisement for Coca-Cola.
Exactly.
Both are popular. Both are done for publicizing or for advertising. And therefore, advertising works. It sticks in people's heads.
But you know what they say, Santa sells.
The claymation movies featured Santa Claus in red and white as well.
Yes.
Yeah. And did that happen before Coca-Cola?
No.
Or was Coca-Cola the one who started that?
Coca-Cola created the white and red. Their white and red portrayal, and also like the big beard and the tummy, the big fat tummy, and how he was taller than the elves, because before that he was kind of around the same size-ish as the elves.
That part I knew. See,
there were different renditions or portrayals of representations of Santa Claus prior to that, but he definitely got the larger size and the red and white outfit and stuff from Coca-Cola.
But that being said, the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer claymation, I'm not sure if you would consider it a short or would it be considered a movie, but either way, it is fantastic. It's hilarious and you should definitely watch it. It kicks off very interesting. It starts out with a number of newspaper clippings showing that there's this insane storm coming for Christmas, and that there's pretty much no chance that Santa's going to be able to make it through, just setting up the idea that Rudolph's going to have to save the day.
And black and white video.
And it's in black and white, and you see people like shoveling snow and that kind of stuff. It's very bleak. But then after that, they kick into Sam the Snowman rolling his way up to come talk to you, and starts the story of, oh, you've never heard about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer? Well, here, let me tell you about it. And then from there, you start to introduce Santa and Christmas Town, as he calls it, but in reality, just talking about the North Pole. So what stood out to you guys in the early scenes?
What stood out to me was that Sam the Snowman admitted or stated that he was younger than, theoretically younger than Santa. Santa, I believe in the show or in this movie, I believe it's implied that he's been around for generations. Sammy the Snowman's only been around less than 100 years. And so that was surprising to me. I thought he would be around I thought he was just part of the cycle of water and that he was always around, but he's not. He's actually young, probably younger than Santa Claus. And so Santa Claus is probably like almost ageless or very old, very ancient, if you were going to compare them.
Who do you think created Sam the Snowman?
That was something I didn't consider. That was something that I thought while I was watching that was these creatures, these entities, Santa, Mrs. Claus, the elves, reindeer, not Sam the Snowman, Sam the Snowman, were they were actually like entities created by the world or by God, like the God of that universe or whatever. They were created as kind of you might say lower G gods, something akin to Viking or Nordic gods or like Greek gods or something, created for purposes for this situation. And I have theories about that later, but something that also stood out was the black and white, how it was actually showing this world, like this reality in the newspaper clippings and in the videos. It was showing something very real. But when they go back to Sam the Snowman, it's a different reality, or it's a different kind of world. And what stood out to me was I thought it's actually separate from the real world, or it's joined to, but they're not necessarily composed of, or they're not subject to this reality.
So something that I saw that kind of plays into my theories on what Santa is, who Mrs. Claus is, and even Sam the Snowman and the elves. One, I think they are universal beings that are there specifically as representatives of what Christmas is. And so they are like almost like elemental forces for this specific time. And Santa is, for one thing, he's able to transport an insane amount of gifts. You see all of the toys from the Island of Misfits. When they jump into his sack, there's like a ton of these giant, large, misshapen toys. But when they go inside, the sack looks like it doesn't change shape at all. You also have the fact. Okay.
Did you guys not ever correlate the other claymation movies with this one?
That is a theory. That's an idea. I believe that they are maybe sister realities to this one.
Yeah, and that's what I think too.
They're not. They are not the same one, but they do have commonalities. So they're close.
Yeah, I was thinking them as alternate realities because there are certain select differences. Some including like what Santa acts like when he's not doing Christmassy things, or like Jack Frost is another one, and that kind of thing, and how he's an elemental being and how he got his powers and stuff. And then on top of that, it keeps expanding. If you think about like, the Easter Bunny and all these kinds of things. But for me, I think something that is telling of the non-standard form of Santa specifically is the fact that he's able to get fat extremely quickly.
Yay, that is a great point. I was going to bring that up
in the
later.
beginning. Mrs. Claus is really annoyed because he's too skinny. He's who ever heard of a skinny Santa? Eat. And he's like, I'm distracted. I'm dealing with the elves and et cetera and et cetera. I got business. And so he's super skinny. And he by the end of the story, you see him still fairly skinny, but then within like, I think it's like 3 or 4 days.
I think it might be within a day.
Or possibly a day.
It was one day.
He's already gained like 70 pounds and he's huge.
He's right.
Able to fill his uniform, which...
Okay, now hear me out. I can answer all these with the claymation videos, and I have an answer to every theory here.
Okay.
So you have Santa Claus is coming to town, right? You have, where you learn the story of Saint Nick and
Sure.
him coming to, making the toys and defeating the bad king, right?
Yeah.
But you also had the ice wizard in that one, right?
Yes.
So if he defeats the ice wizard and takes the ice wizard's powers and then uses that to create the North Pole and the magic in the North Pole or Christmas Town, that could be a possibility, right? You then part ways with that magic and you give it to the elves who create toys. Sometimes learning their magic, they mess up and you create an Isle of Misfit Toys.
Interesting.
All right.
Okay.
Just saying. But also, another possibility, what if the perspective of the Ice Wizard from St. Nick, what if the Ice Wizard was actually Jack Frost?
Well, I thought that was implied, but
Take the powers of the elemental being and you create it for your own magical purposes to live up in the coldest place in the world. Just saying.
I
don't know.
I considered that theory. I don't believe it is the same reality, but if you did consider it, the end result of my theory, if you took that and you said they were the same, one of the same universe, that would make Santa Claus evil. He would be the bad guy. If you considered that, because
he was a bully, and Rudolph, he definitely was a bad guy.
I do believe. I believe that he lives off. He is sustained by. The reason he put on the weight is because he consumes Christmas. Elves. Hermes states when he meets. Okay, so I have a different theory about what Santa is and what the and what the elves are and what Mrs. Claus is, what Sammy the Snowman is. Santa Claus.
But I want to be a dentist.
Okay, so Hermes is either a genetic defect. He has genetic defects or recessive genes, and he is an elf. But when he meets Rudolph, he says that I'm not an elf, or he says he is called an elf by the head elf. He says he is an elf. So that means he is an elf, but when he greets Rudolph, he says, I don't want to be an elf. I want to be a dentist.
I want to be a dentist.
In other words, tying the occupation with the entity of elf. In other words, you are one and the same. You having the occupation, that job, you notice that the elves, when they behave as elves, they have similar traits. They have similar desire. They have the same desires. They have the same traits. They have to do the same thing. They want to do the same thing.
And they act nearly in unison.
I think that he either is a progressed or an altered form of an elf, or by the very fact that he leaves the other elves, he leaves that form, he becomes an alternate one, and by being alternate, he no longer is elf. He becomes dentist. He becomes a different thing, meaning that the elves are created to fulfill a purpose. Once they leave, they have the potential to do other things, but their root origin is this. I also believe that the head elf is an evolved, or he is an offshoot of the main elves because he has facial hair. The other ones do not.
True.
He has different characteristics than the other elves, but he still has those core things. He'd be more like a hobgoblin to goblins. He would be a progressed form of elf, and he's at that state. I believe that
My elf
Hermes
evolves into head elf.
exactly, and I believe that Santa is not in this world. Christmas isn't the Christmas of our world. It's not. It has a bunch of the other characteristics. It has a bunch of the characteristics of the movie Christmas, but we also have Christ Mass Christmas. This isn't that. Jesus isn't associated with this Christmas. It is a different thing. It's a different process. It's a different holiday. It is one and the same with its purpose. Its purpose is Christmas, and it has to sustain Christmas in order to exist. I believe Santa Claus is an entity that he lies. That's one thing. He lies, and he also judges. He expects perfection or no defect when he's dealing with the elves, when he's dealing with the reindeer, when he's dealing with children. He reinforces you have to do these things. And if you don't, he cuts you off of the list. If you don't, you're not on the team. You're not accepted. You're ostracized from the group. The same with the elves. He doesn't approve with them. I think
But Rudolph was just the shiny version of the reindeer. That's all.
That's all.
I believe that I don't believe that the reindeer are reindeer. Two, I believe that they are sentient creatures closer to humans, and that they have words and thoughts and concepts that are closer to humans, and they use these things closer to humanoid entities, and they have things that they use, expressions that they use that are only for humanoid beings. They don't apply to. They wear clothes, and either they self-generate makeup, which is similar to human makeup, the females, or they have qualities and expressions, abilities to think and create things like a humanoid creature would, which reindeer do not, and they have the ability.
Interesting theory, because in a lot of other Christmas movies, it's the same way with the reindeer. So I like that theory. I like it. Keep going. You're good.
I believe that Santa is a god, or a lowercase god, or an entity for judgment, and that his job is to create pain and life. So he has these beings which fulfill Christmas, and he puts Christmas out there by creating toys which are sentient. The elves have the power to create sentient beings with the toys, which are able to talk, emote, cry, things, experience pain and torment, things that they exist. I believe that he is what do you call it when you have castes? When you have a system with a lower caste, higher caste, and you have a
hierarchy or a monarchy.
Well, it is a monarchy, but this is a
society.
They're different races. They have class-based. It's a class-based system, and with Santa Claus at the head, he expects perfection. The elves are above the reindeer. Reindeer aren't paid. They are admitted into this world. And so when you have they're allowed to, the approval of Santa is necessary, and they have to obey the elves. The reindeer have to obey the elves. If they don't, it's implied that Santa disapproves of you. The other elves push you, or sorry, the other reindeer push you out of the group.
Yeah.
And you don't
get to enjoy any other reindeer games.
You also don't get to see other reindeer that aren't participating. Where are the other reindeer? They are excluded. And if you look at
They become a meal for the abominable snowman.
Yes, I believe that Santa and the abominable snowman are of the same type, and that Santa feeds the unapproved or the non-sufficient reindeer and elves to him. Santa has a knowledge of all good and all bad. If at all times he knows what's happening. I believe Santa knew what was happening with Rudolph, Herbie, and Yukon Cornelius at all this time, and he knows about it when the abominable persecutes or goes after the other reindeer. I believe he feeds them because he has a self-sustained, not economy, but self-sustained ecosystem. And in order to create a well-functioning Christmas, in order to continue the cycle, he has to send out, or he permits the elimination of the elves that he disapproves of, and because he doesn't go out to seek out Rudolph. He lets them go, just like he lets
Did you
everything
notice
else.
that he doesn't really approve of any of the elves, though? Like when they did the performance for him, he was disinterested.
Yeah.
He was disinterested until they met the standard. He expects the standard, which is perfection. If you don't, he doesn't approve of you. And they are desperate to fulfill that. They're afraid. Huh. And this is the other thing. You don't see ages of these people. You also see that the elves only create toys. They don't create clothes. They don't create buildings. And you see around them, they have buildings, clothes, things that they use, structures and equipment, like things that are normal everyday items, but they don't have contact with the outside world. I believe that underneath the North Pole, underneath Christmas Town, is another factory. The other factory is filled with elves that are producing the non-toy related items. Santa keeps them down there, and you notice the cave systems. You notice the reindeer live in cave systems around there. The reindeer, if they had this amount of children, the population would be higher. If the elves were around, the population would be higher. You'd expect more differences in that, and you would expect to see where they're producing these things. There are caves, there are things that are being produced. I believe that there's another cast, there's another group of elves and reindeer which are lower, and they're performing these other tasks underneath Santa's castle. There's another factory down there. And Santa knows, in order to keep the balance, because you can't have too much of a population, especially if they're defective, if they're not doing what you want. So he has to keep them going over to the abominable snowman and being wiped out, or keep them down, because the amount of kids that they had, if they had this amount of kids year by year, and with how long they live, you would see a larger population of reindeer. You don't. So he's either killing them off, or he's having them work for him and another cast. And I believe the fear that they have, the abominable snowman hates everything Christmas. Okay? Santa knows this, but they're still there. They're still existing there. And he doesn't set up defenses and everything. And it's a carnivorous being. It seeks out anything Christmas. I believe that Santa knows they're there. He uses that.
Read the story of Krampus?
Right.
No, he uses that a form of population control for the elves and for that. And I think Santa might actually be, where do they get the meat from? Where do they get the meat from for the food? I think Santa might be eating and might be feeding elves and himself, elves and reindeer, as a form of population control. The fact that
I thought Santa liked cookies.
Santa liked cookies, but he did have meat. He had meat. What kind of meat?
And milk.
You don't see.
Well,
cows.
It's not implied as meat because it's all one color.
Exactly. What do you have that's not? It's really colored.
but it's all one color. It's all
They-
like a grayish, purplish tone with shapes. So it looks like potatoes and maybe meat, but
It's meat. It's meat. He's eating meat. Where did they get the meat? There aren't cows up there. There's not other reindeer out there. There's not
there
chickens.
used to be.
There's nothing out there. There's just a form of meat which lasts all year long.
You notice there's no penguin there.
Green.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like Soylent Green. And the elves,
Soylent Red and Green.
the other thing is Rudolph. Okay, so I believe that they either extraterrestrials that have come down to Earth and take place, but I don't believe that they are reindeer, and I don't believe that they are just humans, a kind of human. I believe that, and you notice Herbie, who's either a genetic branch off of elf, and Rudolph, who has this nose which could glow, and I believe it does glow. And if it doesn't, it has refractive capabilities where it absorbs and changes, like it absorbs all ambient light and reflects it out. These things are genetic aberrations, and I believe that they arrived at the same time to break Christmas because the way that Santa was doing things is unsustainable. Another thing is, once
Christmas.
they save Christmas, but not as how Christmas was. They're introducing new components into it because Santa, he knows sentient things. He knows where things are. He knows. One thing is he went to the island of misfit toys and he didn't ask permission from King Moonracer to take the toys. It is a kingdom. It is a kingdom populated by these toys. He shows up and destroys his reign, his kingdom. He doesn't ask, and Moonracer doesn't say one word. Why? Because Santa is a threat. He doesn't know what Santa's going to do, and Santa came and destroyed. He wiped out all this. The other thing is, King Moonracer said that he keeps the toys until he finds one that doesn't exist. He finds a child that will love the toys, the misfit toys, and then he delivers it to him. But it's shown in the movie that he hasn't delivered these toys. They are lonely. They've been forgotten. They aren't being brought to children. He's only procuring them. In other words, building up his kingdom. And there's no outlet.
Or maybe a potential army to usurp Santa's kingdom.
Santa comes there. I believe that they are enemies, but he's not going to say one thing because Santa's so powerful. I mean, he kills off all the reindeer and elves. So Santa, I believe that he's always on a goal to put these toys to children and stuff. And the toys' main purpose is to be loved by children. In other words, he's keeping them here, and he knows that they're in the Island of Misfit Toys. I believe the Island of Misfit Toys is like a purgatory where these toys that are defective, because he doesn't like defects, they stay there, and he only lets the good ones go out. I believe.
Let's explore this in a different direction real quick. What if subconsciously the elves were making the toys as weapons to take down Santa? And so you wind up getting the Island of Misfit Toys, the ones that are rejected, they're not accepted by Santa, right? So they're all dropped off, and Moonracer knows what's going on, collects the toys there, knowing that these toys are going to come to help in the future.
That's possible.
They aren't. One thing is for sure, he doesn't like the Misfit Toys. He hasn't gotten them before. He waited until someone asked him to do so. And when he did, he completely obliterated all of the kingdom of King Moonracer. There's 0 of them left. He came and destroyed a place, and he evidently knew, he had foreknowledge of where it was, what they were. He didn't ask for a guide to go there. He knew where it was, but he still didn't pick them up, even though he knew they were suffering, even though he knew that they wanted, and apparently he knows where the children are that want these toys, but he hasn't dropped them off yet. In other words, he's letting them be there, subsist, and continuing to be in this state of pain. I believe that he and the Abominable Snowman are in a constant cycle where one, he feeds the abominable snowman, and the abominable snowman lets them have a certain population, so Santa can always keep this workforce going. He's
So
been around
are
a
we
long.
saying Moonracer is not a toy?
I don't think no, he's not a toy.
I think Moonracer is a sentient griffin or griffin-esque creature, a
Yeah.
lion that has wings and for some reason also cares about having his own kingdom because he has a castle and a crown and everything.
I believe the fact that Santa constantly lets these entities, he creates new ones and he puts them out to children where they're going to die. They're going to die, be in pain. They're going to be left eventually. They're always going to break down and not be wanted. By the way, I believe that the Island Kingdom of Misfit Toys, it had a much larger population of Misfit Toys, which you don't see because it can't be all of time that these toys have been put here and they've been forgotten and they only have that small of a population. There's lots more.
What if the meat that being served is actually narwhal?
Hey, Mr. Narwhal.
I think that Santa is a god, or he is an entity for judgment, and that he is constantly seeking judgment. And the other thing is, another thing I would say is, you notice that the abominable snowman loses his ability to eat the reindeer and eat the elves. At the same time, Santa changes his tune and he says, I'm going to accept misfit toys. I'm going to accept the cast-offs because he can no longer put them, he can no longer shuffle away the other, he can no longer shuffle away the outcasts and the undesirables.
He has nowhere to put them.
He has nowhere to put them and decrease it. And so he has to have a more effective Christmas. He has to have more effective reindeer and elves. And so and toys, he has to accept these cast-offs because he has nowhere to put the surplus of elves and reindeer. He has to shuffle them off. He has to put them.
So
and these toys, he has to get them out.
My theory is not nearly as dark. Mine is a little simpler. I look at this movie as the changing of the guard. It's a paradigm shift for the entire idea of what Christmas is in this universe. I don't think that the reindeer, the elves, and Santa Claus, and the abominable snowman, and King Moonracer are beings, they are representations of aspects of Christmas. And so you have typical Christmas, the idea of do right, get reward, that kind of stuff. Santa expects you to, he doesn't expect perfection, but he does expect near perfection. And so that includes the toys that are built, if they have defects, if they're named wrong, if they don't fit the mold, they are sent away, put on the island of misfit toys because they don't have a place to go because Santa is growing complacent. He's gotten used to his one single standard, and that's all that he expects, including how the elves sing, how the elves perform, how the elves are able to build toys. If they're no longer fitting that standard, even the other elves look at Hermie and go, what's wrong with you? Shame on you that you are not fitting this standard. And he leaves. So I think the same idea, you have the representation of anti-Christmas in the abominable snowman. He's a creature that hates everything about Christmas and is physically violent to anything related to Santa, the quasi-positive aspect of Christmas. And then you have the in-between, which is not fitting the standard of Santa, not fitting negative Christmas. And you have that in King Moonracer, who literally is a representation of something that's natural that's been changed to not be what it normally is, a lion with wings. You have that, and you have all of these toys, these living creatures, because they're sentient, they're able to talk, they're able to have feelings, they're able to describe, hey, I wish I fit a standard, but I don't, and now I'm quasi-useless. I'm on this island with King Moonracer, an aberration himself. So I think we are watching a generational shift. You're seeing all these new reindeer get born. You see Fireball, who Rudolph meets when he's starting out. You're seeing reindeer who don't fit the standard mold of what the reindeer look like in the classic 8 reindeer that pull Santa's sleigh. And so you have instead a situation where there's, for who knows how long, potentially thousands of years, Santa's been existing as this type of Santa. He knows what he wants, he expects that, and if anything doesn't fit that mold, it gets taken away. It's no longer considered Christmas. So with the change being brought on by either a physical representation of change in Rudolph or a sociological change in Hermie, going, hey, I'm not going to fit the standard of wanting to just build toys. I'm a living being. I can choose what I want to do in my life, and I don't have to fulfill the purpose expected of me. I can fulfill my own purpose that I think is just as important, becoming a dentist. And because of that, you get to then see him and Rudolph connect in that way, leave, and through their actions, meeting Yukon Cornelius, who is in a place that doesn't have silver and gold, but he continues to pursue something that to any other person, any other prospector would go, this is stupid, and you're never going to fulfill this purpose. Do what everyone else does.
I don't think he's human.
Well, that's the other thing. Potentially, he's not a regular being as well, especially because he's aware of bumbles. So he's aware of beings that to all other parts of humanity doesn't exist. Like the only people that know about them are elves, reindeer, Santa, and Yukon Cornelius. It's the only characters that ever mention knowing anything about bumbles.
And he knows how to defeat them and their eating habits.
Exactly. And so you have, to me, more or less totems or representations of aspects of Christmas. And so with Rudolph being born, he's literally the new era for what Christmas is going to be. It's no longer Santa's standard expectation, which he's gotten used to, which he expects to stay. Instead, it's a representation of change. And so you have the personal representation or personal change in Hermie going, hey, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to have my own job. And it's going to fulfill a super important purpose because the elves need dentists. They eat candy all the time. And even the lead elf has mouth issues. And so he goes, oh, yeah, you're going to see me week from Tuesday because it's that necessary. And everything that's centered around these Christmas creatures, including Santa, including the reindeer, including the elves, they have to fulfill their purpose. Their job is who they are. And so when you have these beings that are not fitting what the idea of that job should be, but still fulfills a purpose, Santa has to go, oh, I was wrong. I actually do need you. You're actually an important aspect of this society, this kingdom that I've built. And I have to not ignore the cast-offs that have been pushed away into King Moonrazor's kingdom. Instead, I have to identify, yes, they have a purpose. They have something of worth to benefit Christmas. And he has to change his perspective on what Christmas is.
I believe it's an expansion of Christmas.
Yeah.
And
it incorporates the other beings that represented parts of Christmas. It brings them all together. You have King Moonrazor fulfilling his purpose and getting these toys where they need to go ultimately. You have the abominable snowman who
had to get them where they needed to go.
Yeah, get them where they needed to go. Except for I'll mention it later. There's an aspect at the end of the movie that always makes me really sad.
The bird?
Yes. Anyway, but you have the abominable snowman who is a being that hates Christmas, actively tries to kill people and creatures, and yet when he is now no longer able to perform his function, the no longer having teeth, he's not the negative aspect of Christmas anymore. He is now a full-fledged member of this society, and he actually does fulfill a purpose. He's putting stars on stuff. Maybe he's going to help out with building. Who knows? He's a sentient being who's able to do smaller, simpler tasks. So he'll have a purpose also.
That's another thing. It identifies the difference between Christmas things and non-Christmas things, and it hates Christmas things. It directly goes after them. In other words, it has sentience, which you see with its laughter. It has an intelligence, which makes it even more evil after that point.
Also, the thing that I think of when it shows the fact that these are not standard corporeal beings is the fact that Rudolph, a seemingly normal reindeer, except for the fact that he has a nose that emits light, and sound, is the fact that he takes an entire chunk of rock to the face, and all it does is make his eyes scramble slightly.
Yes.
And then he's back to being conscious.
That's right, without damage.
Without any damage.
These creatures are
seemingly no physical damage.
Supernatural, or they're more than what this reality contains. The other thing is Santa. My theory is that Santa hates Christmas. He hates Christmas. And for that reason, he's always in a cycle of destroying these.
Grown to hate Christmas?
He might have grown to hate Christmas, at least as it was, and he hates it. And for that reason, he's always destroying it. He destroys Christmas,
so that it can be reborn,
and the reindeer. He destroys it, and he lets them go away. He lets them go off and get destroyed with his knowledge, because he knows where they're at. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows everything, but he doesn't. He pretends he doesn't in the movie. He doesn't know, but he does know. He allows.
But he knows.
He knows, and he knows. I think, and then he realizes that he has to. Christmas has to expand because he has no other root. And I do believe that his bitterness from watching. He's older than all the elves. He's older.
He knows when you've been bad, and he knows when you've been good.
He knows the elves. He knows all the elves. He knows when they were created. He knows when the reindeer started happening. He knows all these things. And so after that time, you would be embittered. The other thing is, you notice Santa is skinny at the beginning of the film, but it's not when the story starts. This was after the story ended, and he has to get fattened up for Christmas again. In other words, I believe he forgets. He's in a state of forgetting what the previous year was. He has a comprehension of it, but he's cyclical. And that year by year, he always comes to the state of being thin, and he always eats something, except for this year where things change, where Christmas expands. And he no longer has that option.
So that means you must be good for goodness sake.
That's right.
You better be good. He knows when you are sick. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good. Exactly. And the other thing is, the abominable snowman. I do think Yukon Cornelius isn't a regular human. I believe he can taste when gold and silver are present. That's not a normal thing for humans.
Right.
He's been living out there. He has dogs which aren't built for the Yukon. They are not built for there.
All right, hold on. I want to correct something real quick.
Okay.
When you were younger, did you ever put a penny in your mouth?
Yes,
of course.
I know that
metal has a taste. Metal has a a taste to it.
And you
can differentiate the taste of the metals.
I actually looked into it. All right. We don't have their taste receptors for gold and for silver. We don't have the taste receptors for metal. What we do taste is the interaction of our oils
with
metals. When you do that, you can't taste it. If you clean off metal perfectly, you can't taste it. Humans can't taste it. You can differentiate between the taste of metals by once we have oils applied to it. It releases a chemical, or releases a component, which we are then able to process and identify. This is a different metal than that. But he's looking at
directly. Get some peppermint essential oil and put it on a gold bar and lick it in order to have the taste.
You might. The other thing is though, the other part though of this is he doesn't touch the pick when he does it. It's just in the ground. I believe he can differentiate between the taste and silver and gold, which is not something humans have. He also has experience with the bumbles, and he's been around them, and he survived, and he knows ways to fight them. That's not a thing normal humans can do. Also, he doesn't look like the humans that you see at the beginning of the movie, which are like us humans. I do think he is an entity, possibly to fight against the opponents and the evils that occupy the North Pole, a fight against these entities himself.
I think he is more or less a him in and of himself.
Neutral?
He is the aberration of not an aspect of the three. He is almost the humanity representation in the North Pole.
I can see that.
So he's not negative Christmas with the Bumble. He's not representation of changing Christmas, which is King Moonracer, and he's not standard Christmas or traditional Christmas, which is Santa. He is in between, and he's able to interact with all three.
And he understands the elves and the reindeer, no problem, no issue. He's not surprised at all by sentient talking beasts and animals. And the other thing is, he's my favorite character. It's either him,
100%.
It's either him or Sam.
I was gonna say him or probably Hermie.
Hermie
And him, I think, are my favorite.
So I do think that these are creatures that are not of this world, at least not.
I would have thought that King Moonracer was your favorite.
No, he's one of my least favorite characters.
I really like King Moonracer. Like, I legitimately actually really like King Moonracer.
I think he's threatened by Santa, and there's a lot of dark stuff in there in that relationship, which isn't stated, and for that reason, he's petrified. And I think there's some stuff that
I think he looks at Santa as an equal, but of a second kingdom.
So what you're telling me is that we need a second Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer movie, but what happens is the lower caste elves go to Moonracer's kingdom and they start working for him.
Yeah.
I want to see the elves. I want to see the elves that we don't see, the expansion of the elves.
That's what I'm saying, is those elves that you don't see, they leave and they go to Moonracer's kingdom for safe harbor because Moonracer promises them safety there. And then you have the War of the North Pole.
I was going to say, I want to see the War of the North.
Oh, by the way, when Hermie, when he hits the teeth on the little doll and he says, "This won't hurt a bit," I don't take that lightly. I actually believe the doll might have been able to feel it, have sensation in that place. It's like a birthing chamber in the factory, in the workshop. I believe that
that's what I'm saying. The transfer of magic from the elves to the toys is what gives them a life. But I also think, like, to your theory, if we're going to go with the darker theory here, like they could be subconsciously creating weapons by using their magic to implant that into, and that's how you get the Isle of the Misfit toys, is because those toys were supposed to be malfunctioned weapons.
Non-standard issue.
I actually
if Moonracer was actually going to try and take out the Christmas town.
I actually think that they also could be reincarnated entities. They could either be elves or they could be humans that are reincarnated, and this is their penance, or this is like a process of you're not doing great, and Santa administers the punishment, being you're a toy and you exist and you get recycled once you break down, and then you get reformed into another toy. You get sent out.
To me,
I would never do something like that.
I would never do something like that. I would say the whole thing to me is very reminiscent of what we were learning about the Tolkien universe of Lord of the Rings and stuff, how there's these creatures that exist for jobs, like they are built to fulfill a purpose, and like there's the main god, and then there's like the smaller gods / angels / wizards that all have specific tasks they need to fulfill. And I think, to me, that's what kept coming to mind, was these beings.
Scared. That's right.
These beings are in this area, this potentially not reachable by standard means, because whenever the characters are escaping from a situation, they're breaking off a piece of iceberg and traveling away. So it makes me think Is it even a place you can enter regularly, or does like the currents around it prevent people from reaching that land, this Christmas town? But looking at it like that, I was thinking, ultimately, if none of these characters fulfill their purpose in life, they don't have a life. And so you have the toys that are built properly, their purpose is fulfilled, they go and they land in a kid's Christmas stocking or whatever. Or you have the toys that aren't working properly, they have to be put apart because they don't have a designated place to go yet. So they have to be on this offshooted kingdom, King Moonracer, who himself a representation of aberrant monstrosity. And then same idea, you have Herbie, who should be what a standard elf is. He still loves to help, he still wants to be happy, joyful, and all that, but his purpose is ultimately to help people through the profession of dentistry.
I think that the reindeer, because of the jobs, the reindeer and the elves, they are Christmas. And I think that Herbie and Rudolph, once they separated, they ceased to be Christmas. They went out, and once they rejoined, they became Christmas again. And I think they were the good guys, but then they became Christmas again. They became part of the entity of Christmas, a new Christmas by their addition.
Yeah, it makes me think of
what if Yukon Cornelius and consuming the candy cane also became Christmas?
I mean, he is the bringer of the bumble.
Yeah,
he is. And the other thing is, the bumble is a threat. But the bumble ceases to be a threat. Even though it still has the claws and the capability of killing, it does.
But it
still
no
have the
longer appears to be threatening anymore.
The other thing is, he says, looky what the bumble can do. And he knew exactly, he wasn't looking, he knew what the bumble was going to do with the star on top of the tree. In other words, he was training it. He had experience with having the bumble put the star up there, and he knew that it didn't have a threat, even though up to that point it was a threat.
I believe actually right before that, he also says that me and him had a talk, which, if we're talking about Yukon Cornelius being a intermediary of the three aspects of Christmas, the three kingdoms, it's possible that the main fact that he is not of all three, or not part of one of the three, he's able to incorporate one aspect of Christmas into another. So he's able to take the negative Christmas and bring it into the traditional Christmas, which is also kind of fulfilling the purpose of something not correct, which is what Moonracer is talking about, and bringing it into a situation where it's now fulfilling purpose.
I believe that Yukon was an enemy of the North Pole, of Christmas Town, prior to Rudolph and Herbie coming back. I believe he was an enemy to that Christmas. And then once he brought the bumble in, he transformed it, being that enemy. Not like attacking them, but destroying Christmas as it was.
Can we talk about the potential possibility that maybe Santa is an interdimensional being?
Yeah.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, he's an interdimensional being.
Yeah, I'd say that's...
Yeah, so meaning that he kind of outdoes every other Christmas being because he exists in multiple different dimensions / universes.
Oh, that's an interesting...
So you're saying same Santa, different universe?
Yes.
He occupies them all. Almost, he's omniscient. He might... Would you think he's God of this? I considered it, but I don't think he is, because he still has to fight.
I think the entity of Santa could potentially be like lowercase g God. I mean, if we're going to talk about like interdimensionality and crossing over with other storylines, we could always jump into like what is it? Tim Allen's Santa Claus?
The Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm.
The Santa Claus, and that whole process there, where if the Santa Claus goes away, there is a new Santa Claus put in place, and they become the Santa Claus. And so it's a continuous cycle. And there's never not a Santa Claus. There's always a Santa Claus, but it's an entity that inhabits a body.
So
And they always
almost like
have the memories of the previous.
Because to me, I am seeing Santa Claus, if Santa is in every single universe the same being, but he hops in these different universes, I think he could be a god or deity of right and wrong. He is represented because it's the end of the year. Things are passing away before the rebirth of a new year, and he is what is basically counting the dues of all humanity, represented in obviously the children, because the children are the future, but he is holding everyone accountable. So he's almost like a deity completely based around the idea of justice. Did you do right? Are you deserving of reward? Or did you do wrong and you're deserving of punishment? But even punishment, the coal still has a purpose. You can still use it. It keeps you alive and it keeps you warm through the winter till the rebirth of the new year. So,
or if you press it like super hard, you get diamonds.
Or if you press it really hard.
I think less judgment. I think more judge, less justice. In that he carries it out, in that he lies or he deceives often, and that he does exact judgment upon these things. He doles out punishment to these entities when they don't satisfy.
What do you mean by he lies or deceives?
Well, for one thing, if we're going off the idea that he's in the same person in different universes, we can talk about Year Without a Santa Claus. He disguises himself as a normal man arriving in Southtown, which is also an awesome movie. Highly recommend it. Definitely watch it. It's hilarious and fun and a great Christmas movie. But when he arrives in Southtown, he disguises himself as a normal human being, very reminiscent of what Christ does. He comes to Earth as a human and lives a human life. So you have Santa representing himself as a human person, lying to people, including children, saying, "My name is Mr. Klaus." And while he's doing that, he also gets sick.
I would say that's more deception, but
either way, he's now, for some reason, susceptible to sickness, to viruses. When you think of Santa, you never think of him being affected by the cold. He loves the cold. He's in the cold constantly, but he gets a cold in that movie.
That's the other thing. These entities live in the North Pole, and they don't have, and the cold does not have an effect on them.
Yeah.
Santa, he isn't affected by the cold.
Ice wizard.
Yeah. And he did something else. I forget when he was talking to like Donner. I think he was mentioning something and he wasn't honest. He like said something to Rudolph or about Rudolph. He's like, "Oh yeah, he'll be part of the team," or something like that. And he,
right in the beginning when they first introduce Rudolph to Santa, he goes, I should get to know him if he's going to be a part of the team soon. So that's the other thing, is that we've had the traditional 8 reindeer, because you see a couple of them here and there, like teaching the other reindeer, which makes me think it is a generational change, because you never hear about other reindeer until this time, this exact span of days, where you have Rudolph get born, presumably Fireball get born, and these other Clarice get born, all these beings that are classically associated with Santa, and you never see other outliers for reindeer, which makes me think this is like a BC and an AD change of only it's before Rudolph, after Rudolph change in the timeline where it's no longer that representation of what Christmas was. We've now hit this mark. Rudolph is born, and we now live in a post-Rudolph reality.
This is one of the things that I believe goes to my point that there are other ones, and that this is he's killing them off, in that you don't see these other ones, and the growth rate of the bucks, of the does and the bucks, the growth rate of these reindeer is much too rapid for there to be this classic lineup of reindeer, Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, Blitzen. They are there, and they have.
I was just going to ask, can you name them all?
And Rudolph.
The only thing I hear when I hear that is just Arnold Schwarzenegger saying it from Jingle All the Way.
And so
as he's running away from Sinbad.
If they grow this rapidly, that means that they have to have more reindeer, but you're not seeing the reindeer. In other words, there's got to be some way to get rid of them.
Well, I think they're only born when it is needed. They're needed to perform their purpose, because everything's associated.
That's another one. But then
your profession.
But then that comes into,
and that's why
would Santa disregard them? If he knows that they are there for the purpose of being his new team, he still says no to these reindeer. But they're only there for a certain time, for the time that they're there.
But that's the thing. We don't ever see the reindeer get killed, because obviously Rudolph gets smashed in the head with a giant boulder that the Bumble has.
The other thing is, it's a kid's movie.
Well, obviously. But beyond that, you could also see the implication that, I don't have to keep all these new reindeer. They don't have to be the select 8 for my team. If a few of them are no longer needed, I still have my previous team to fall back on.
But they don't age out. Why isn't he stressed about that? Why isn't Santa stressed about the fact that he might lose his?
Do we need a new reindeer? Is that what's going on here? Is this what we're coming to? Do we need a new reindeer?
A new Rudolph, or do you think like just a whole new squad, like a whole new
squad?
We've got Boris and Victor and
they
Fireball,
and Rudolph
and Clarice and the other.
No. Clarice marries Rudolph, and they go and do their reindeer thing together.
I was gonna say, I think the female reindeer, including Rudolph's mom and Clarice, I think the female reindeer, as sad as it is, their main purpose is just to create the next generation of reindeer.
They breed.
I think their literally only existence is to create the next generation and cause more reindeer to come per changing of the timeline.
But they also cull genetic diversity or genetic variants from the line of reindeer. They have a selection process and they choose ones. Clarice, being one of the new generation, chose an aberration. She chose a genetically different.
No daughter of mine.
Is gonna
being
reindeer.
being the very most dangerous thing. That's why his parents reacted. That's why everybody was like, no, we can't have Rudolph because he's a new genetic variant, and you can't have that. And so she selected him, meaning there is a new requirement for reindeer coming in the future.
Which, if Rudolph does have a child, is it going to also hold the red-nosed gene?
It's implied.
Or is that just an aspect of one? Is that how it presented itself, as just his nose, but like his child is going to have like red hooves or red antlers?
This is the other thing. I was wondering where that gene came from. The Donner, or I forget, what's her name? What's the name of?
I don't think they ever actually say his mom's name.
Rudolph's mom. But I was wondering about that. But if so, there's some interesting things happening. And if they are representations of Christmas, again, it's being forced by some other hand. Christmas now needs to change. It has to be something different. And
which is what makes me think
red isn't the only color a reindeer can be born with.
Hmm.
Green,
Blue,
blue.
white.
Silver. Gold.
And what does it mean? His nose actually drew. I mean, if it was just a random light, there's all kinds of lights around. Why was it that the abominable snowman knew the difference between that red light and something else, and he was drawn to it? It is Christmas.
And
And
it fulfills a select purpose of being to cut through really, really foggy light. If it was a white light, it wouldn't do that.
That is a good point.
So to me, that means potential prophecy situation because it's built specifically to solve the problem.
yeah, Santa needs to, things are stepping up for Christmas.
Yes.
And
Christmas
Santa and
Christmas and who Santa is has got to change. He can't be set in his ways anymore.
got to level up.
He's gotten a little jerky in his ways. In fact, he talks down to Rudolph. He treats him like trash and then leaves.
Yes.
And then we're just supposed to accept that. But in reality, what's going on is no, Santa, it's time to change, and other reindeer, it's time to change, and elves, it's time to change.
I think Santa eats Christmas.
Living
I
off
think
the idea of
I think
Christmas.
he absorbs the energy of Christmas.
He eats Christmas cookies.
That's right.
Yeah. Which, leaving something out for a stranger to come by and get who you've never met before is the most simplest form of giving, is it not? Which a lot of people think that is the main purpose of Christmas. So what would Santa eat? The
Christmas
idea of giving.
Yes.
He receives. He's always receiving. He doesn't create the toys. He has the people who create the toys, and he gives them away, but he receives things. He receives the pleasure.
But he gives them a home to create those.
He does. It's a necessity. Ergo, the cycle. He has to create and destroy. That's his goal. And he has to maintain the balance. If the balance goes wrong, and he has to get rid of the things that disturb the balance, i.e. Herbie and Rudolph, until the balance is restored with the destruction of the teeth of the abominable snowman, and the creation of these new things which facilitate greater expansion of Christmas.
I love this movie.
What if
it's so good.
What if during the off season, Santa is actually a hunter?
He hunts and cultivates a store, so that way there's enough stored up food that the elves can live off of, and him and Mrs. Claus can survive through the
Imagine him being a fisher and going and fishing out narwhals.
Yeah.
Sentient narwhals.
Bunch of penguin traps. Santa laying out penguin traps.
Narwhals that can talk.
Griffin lions.
Like the other. But the thing is, they also had Eskimos there, which is like...
That's true. You do see Eskimos very briefly.
Yeah, but they didn't look like the other humans that were there.
No.
These are other things. I think that, and the Christmas trees also spontaneously generate decorations. I believe that this is Christmas. This world has to have a Christmas, and so it generates them.
Although you also see squirrels and birds decorate a tree.
Yeah, you do. In other words, they're disposed to it. They're part of it.
Which to me is more the idea that it's by existing in that realm, you naturally have Christmas Christmas ideas. You are naturally pursuing Christmas all the time. The silver and gold decorations you're placing on the tree is because they're wild animals, but they're doing this out of instinct. And so I think it's by being in this area, in this realm of influence of Santa and being in the traditional Christmas land.
I believe he has alteration powers.
It's causing you to act on those potentially hive mind-like ideologies of Christmas and what Christmas is supposed to be.
I believe Santa can imbue things with, potentially imbue things in the world with the Christmas spirit.
It's possible. But final thoughts. We dug into this amazing Christmas classic, and I, for one, Love this movie. Watch it every year. If you haven't watched it this year, go out and see it. It is so good.
Just remember
And
Santa's evil.
Just remember that Santa is evil.
He's a necessary. He's a
think-
necessary.
yeah.
He's like winter. He's like summer, winter, spring, and fall.
He
You
must
have to
come
have it.
and he must leave.
You have to have the winter. You have to have the Christmas season.
Be prepared for it.
Closing thoughts.
Yeah. Any closing thoughts? Cape is a lie.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
All right. What about you, Cranberry Landers? You got anything for final thoughts on this Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer classic film by Rankin Bass?
I love this movie, and with how they wrote the story and the characters and everything, it leaves a lot there to dig into, and it's not meant for that, but that's what they left it as, what they created, and I've enjoyed it as a child, and these are things that I thought about as a child, and through the years I've actually contemplated these things, and it's a good Christmas movie. I encourage you to give it to your watch it with your kids, and it's good enough for three guys here.
And from 1 to 91.
Yes,
Go ahead and watch it with whoever you have with you. Just appreciate the time you have with those people, and the gift that keeps on giving, which is just the life we have here on this earth, to enjoy fantastic movies, even as something as fun and simple as a little claymation movie about a reindeer with a glowing nose.
yeah.
So,
Happy New Year.
yeah, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And we wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, nerds.
All right, bye. Bye.
Bye. Merry Christmas.